Today, we're going to learn about early civilization. Remember, you do not need to write down the bullet points. However, by the end of today, you should know those bullet points. So you should know what allowed people to move all over the world. You should know the second technology to change the world. You need to know some definitions. And what ends all the Stone Ages? I'll give you a few more seconds to get that finished. If you can remember from the last day we took notes about early humans, the very first time period for humans was called the Old Stone Age. Now we don't know exactly when that starts. Remember, we said that you have to decide what makes a human. And so whenever you say that happens, however long ago, until the year 10,000 BC, we call that time period the Old Stone Age. Known because stone was the most common tool and it's the oldest time period. The next time period of humans is called the Middle Stone Age. This is because life isn't exactly like it was in the Old Stone Age with the hunter-gatherers kind of just traveling around trying to survive. So it's a little different because this time period is marked by humans beginning to migrate or move around the world. However, stones were still the most common tool. Now, there were a few reasons why those humans started migrating around the world during the Middle Stone Age. One reason was this time period was marked by an ice age. Yeah, like the movie Ice Age. Granted, you didn't have talking animals like you do in the movies. However, there was an ice age when parts of the world froze over more than what the world is now. So it created more land. And some of those pieces of land that we don't have anymore in the world, but were there at that time, those are called land bridges. One of the most famous land bridges, we think, was between Asia and North America. It was way up in the northeastern corner of Asia. And it's actually, if you look over at the world map, those of you who can see, look over way on the west side of the map, up towards the top there, you'll see that little bit of Asia. And then you'll see it's almost connected to Alaska. Almost connected to Alaska. We believe there was a land bridge between those two pieces of land up there. And we think humans were able just to walk right across from Asia into North America, thus beginning the settlement of the continent that we live on. Now, another important thing that makes the humans be able to migrate all over the world is that last bullet, fire. Once again, not the invention of fire, but the controlling of fire and eventually the creation of fire. Because as you can see, there was an ice age. That's what made those land bridges. But it was really, really cold. How could the humans survive the ice ages? How could they survive traveling those land bridges when it's freezing cold most of the time? Well, they used that very first technology of the world. And that was the controlling and then eventually the creation of fire. That pretty much takes us through the Middle Stone Age. We'll jump right into another technology changing the world, and then giving us yet another time period of the early humans. We just reminded ourselves of the first technology that changed the world, the control and creation of fire. Well, eventually the Ice Age ended, which means the world begins to warm up. The big deal about this is that as the world began to warm up, you now started seeing more plants and more animals. It's easier for plants and animals and humans to survive in warmer climates. And so now you have a lot more variety and just a lot more quantity of plants and animals all over the world. And this is important because the humans now learn, those hunter-gatherers now learn to develop agriculture. Now that's the smart word. Go and impress your family and your friends. Start using the word agriculture. But the definition is simple. A good working definition is just farming. When you see farming, you can say, hey, that's agriculture. Now, the technical definition we're going to use is the raising of crops and animals. Notice how the word raise is underlined. That's very important that you underline that word or do something to make that word stand out for this definition of agriculture, because there's going to be another definition later that means almost the exact same thing as this, but just a little difference, just a change of one word. But agriculture is the raising of crops and animals. Now, when this happens, we have another time period for humans. This one is called the New Stone Age, or Neolithic era. The New Stone Age, or Neolithic era. I'll give you a few seconds. Think about why it's called the New Stone Age. All right, here's why. Still called the Stone Age because stone is still very common. It's still the most common tool. So we've got to still call it the Stone Ages. But there were new ways of living. The biggest example being farming. So make sure you understand the Old Stone Age, hunter-gatherers. And that implies that those people had to move all over the place, hunting and gathering for their supplies and materials that they needed to survive. And then also, stone was the most common tool that they had. Try to remember that picture you saw of those old Stone Age tools. So stone is still very common now, but there are new ways of living. Now, if you don't get everything on each slide, remember, don't panic. You'll still be able to find these notes on my teacher page. So you'll still be able to get any notes that you miss. Here's the big thing about the New Stone Age. Here's the big thing. Here's what agriculture allows the humans to do. People could now live in one spot. Remember, those hunter-gatherers couldn't do that. Can you remember the name of the place that we found in South Africa? It was Border Cave. Border Cave. And we had said that really wasn't a permanent living place for that small group of people. It might have been like a base camp. They might have come back a certain time each year, or they may have just stayed there for a little bit and then moved on and never came back. But agriculture allows people and bigger groups of people to live in one spot together. And this allows the development of civilizations. When we talk about ancient Egypt or ancient Greece or ancient Rome, we can call those things civilizations. And you can see the definition below. Culture that has developed systems of specialization. We'll learn what that word means later. Religion, learning, and government. We wouldn't be able to talk about ancient Egypt or ancient Greece or ancient Rome or other places if agriculture was not developed by some of these earliest humans. You don't have agriculture. You have to keep searching, hunting, and gathering for all the materials you need in order to survive. Plus, you'd be living in smaller groups because there wouldn't be enough materials or supplies or resources to go around to a huge group of people. Agriculture is going to make that possible, to have these bigger civilizations. Give you a few seconds to finish up that slide. Let's talk about one of these earliest places that we have. One of these, this wouldn't really be a civilization. It's really just an example of a community, a society that has agriculture. The name of it is Katal Hayuk. It's kind of a funny name. Katal Hayuk. You can see an arrow pointing to a circled area in Turkey. So today the country's Turkey, and around that circle is where that ancient city of Katal Hayuk was. It was a city of about 5,000 people. That's a lot back in this time. You can see it's around 6,500 BC. Granted, 5,000 people isn't a lot today. Bourbonnais has a lot more than that. Okay, maybe 4 or 5 times that. But remember, we're talking 6,500 BC. That's a very long time ago. This is a large city. In the Old Stone Age, you wouldn't find this many people living together. Let's talk about their homes there. You can see in the top picture, there's the ruins of Katal Hayuk. You see, it looks like, they probably had to excavate it, uncover the whole thing. Granted, you can't see a ton in that top picture. We do believe that the Katal Hayuk homes, the community, looked like this bottom picture you see. Now, this isn't a recreation or anything of a Katal Hayuk community or the homes there. This is actually, I think some of you may know what we might call those homes and where you might find them. You can actually find homes like this in the United States of America. I'll give you a few seconds. Take a look. See if you can come up with either the name that we give those or where you can find this. What you're looking at in that bottom picture, we call those pueblos. You can find them in the southwestern United States. Let's talk a little bit about these homes in Katal Hayuk, which are similar to these pueblos of the American Southwest. We believe these homes are made out of mud with wood beam ceilings. Here's what we mean by that. Okay, so it's not like wet mud. They would use like wet mud to shape this, and then it would harden into their walls. And what we mean by wood beam ceilings, if you take a look at the bottom picture, you might be able to see some like little wood beams poking out the sides of some of the homes, like right there. If you kind of want to get an idea of what it would look like inside, if you take a look up at our ceiling, we have like tiles. What I want you to think of is like take the lights that are hanging down, try to push them into the ceiling, and they would go all the way across the room. And of course, instead of them being like plastic or metal or whatever they are, think of them being like big wood logs. And they would go all the way across our classroom. And they would even stick out the sides into the other classrooms. Then what they do is they have these wood beams up there and take their mud, and then it would harden, and that would become their ceiling. Something else we know about the Catalhayuk homes is that they had fireplaces. Interesting. We have fireplaces now. Makes sense. Remember, they could control and create fire now, and this could be a way they could heat themselves in their homes. They had couches in there. No, not couches like we have in our homes today. And also storage rooms. Storage rooms. Now, we don't really have storage rooms in our houses today, but we do have places that we store stuff. Take a minute and think of a couple things that we use as storage rooms in our homes. What I was thinking was you could think of closets. You might have a basement that even has like space for just storage. Some people use their crawl space for storage. Maybe you thought garage, maybe shed. So we really still do have storage rooms. It's interesting to think of a place 6,500 BC that would have some of these same things that we do today. Some of the traditions of humans have lasted almost forever. Something else I want you to notice about the homes and the community, I should say, in general, is that look at those homes. They're built right up against each other. They're built on top of each other. Interesting. So it's not like your neighborhood where you have a yard or whatever and you kind of have your homes spread out across your neighborhood. Nuh-uh. You have the homes built right next to each other. Walls are shared, and some are even built on top of each other. Another thing that's not like the pueblos that you see in the bottom picture is that the Catalhayuk homes had no doors. None. No doors at all. Maybe on the inside, I guess, if they weren't just like 1 or 2 room homes. But there were no doors to the outside. Instead, you entered down a ladder from your roof. So you had a hole in your roof, and then you had a ladder coming down into your home. Or I guess if you had some homes stacked on top of each other, you'd have to have some ladders going, perhaps even from home to home. Take a little bit of time, think about why would they do this? Why would they bunch all of their homes together kind of in one big complex? And why wouldn't they put any doors to the outside? Well, the biggest reason why they would do this, put the homes right next to each other in a complex and just have ladders coming down from the roof into the home, protection. This would help keep them protected against enemies. You see, you couldn't have your homes spread out all over the place, even like a neighborhood like where you might live, because what don't they have when it comes to communicating? What don't they have? They don't have telephones, cell phones. They have no way to like call each other up and saying there's danger coming or anything. No, all they could do is yell, scream. That's all they could do. How could you do that across an entire neighborhood or like the city of Bourbonnais? Somebody like me has a really loud voice. Maybe I could be heard for a really far way, but for the most part, no. You wouldn't be able to get the word out. Also, you don't have cars or anything to get you to far away very fast. You'd have to run. And if you kind of had your homes all spread out, the enemy would know that. What would they do? They'd go to one home at a time and take over that home. And before anybody could get there to help you, they had already destroyed your home. So keeping your homes all bunched up like this would have everybody all together at once. Somebody could go to the top of the community or the complex of homes and start screaming that they need help or that enemy's coming. And then everybody can get to their positions or whatever to help protect their community. And now think about the no doors. If I can't break down any doors, the way that you get in your home is the way I have to get into your home. I'm going to have to find a way to climb up onto your roof. And by the way, the community is probably going to kick down all those ladders and stuff and make it hard to get up to the roofs. And so if they could still make it up, bring their own ladders or whatever to get to your roof, they then have to get down into your roof. You might have taken your ladder away. So what are they going to do? Jump down into your home and break their legs or fall into the holes? Or even if you forgot to take down the ladder into your home, they're going to get to the opening, start climbing down. What are you going to be doing? Standing right there with your spear. Or if they had like arrows or whatever, you're going to be standing right there. And you can be like, oh, hello. And you're going to get them. This was a great way to defend your community. Keep everybody close together so you can get the word out and everybody's there right away. And it's hard for the enemy to get to you. You have the advantage when it comes to your defense. Getal Hayuk, 5,000 people, 6,500 BC. A pretty interesting place. We also know in Getal Hayuk and in other communities of this time that people had learned to domesticate certain plants and animals. Now, domesticate is an awful lot alike agriculture. Take a look at the definition. This is why I had you underline or do something to make the word raise stand out. Because domesticate is a very close definition. To domesticate something means to train crops and animals to be more useful. Train crops and animals to be more useful. So agriculture is literally just growing or raising crops and animals. Whatever qualities they have, you take it or leave it. But domesticate is actually the purposeful training of crops and animals to be more useful. I don't totally get it. I'm not sure how you can train crops and train animals to be more useful. It's not like teaching your dog to do tricks like sit down and bark and all that kind of stuff. No. Not like that. It's like almost breeding them over generations where they literally kind of change and are now more useful. As you would now, after a few generations of messing around with the crops or breeding animals a certain way, like their offspring, and granted, you might not think of crops as having offspring, but whatever generation of seed that you plant or whatever the offspring of the animals are, they just all of a sudden become more useful to humans. Like they talk about cats you have as pets at home or dogs you have as pets at home. We're not really sure that they were always around with humans. We think they found a way to breed those animals over time to be more tame and to then even become like pets to humans. I'm not sure how they did it. I don't totally get it, but they did it. Give you a few seconds to make sure you get all that down. right, let's stick with this new way of living for humans. Okay, so you've got agriculture. Once you have agriculture, bigger groups of people can now live together in one spot. You don't go anywhere. Your life isn't all about now having to hunt and gather and travel all around trying to meet all of your needs. So now you have a group of people living in one spot, and they can now raise the crops and animals they need to survive. You now have a lot more time. You now have a lot more people who don't all need to be doing agriculture. Because you've seen farms, you can produce a lot of stuff on a farm to feed a bunch of people. All of a sudden, you've got people who have time on their hands. That had never happened before. Agriculture will now allow people to use this time to specialize. Specialize. Our definition of specialize is people training to do particular kinds of work. It's almost like domesticate. But domesticate is training crops and animals to be more useful. Specializing is people training to do particular kinds of work. I want you to take a minute or two, and I'll give you a minute or two. I want you to come up with what you think some of these new jobs might be. What are some of these new jobs that people might have in a community like Catalhayuk? And go ahead and write those down as a list underneath new jobs in your notes. All right, now I want you to turn to the people you're sitting right next to, or right in front of you, or right behind you, and take another minute and share some of your ideas of what those new jobs are. If you like something that you hear, go ahead, add it to your list. All right, some jobs that people come up with might be builders. You might need people to build homes and other kinds of things. A job might become farmer. Maybe you thought of clothing maker or a tool maker. Sometimes they call those blacksmiths. Maybe you had teachers. Some people have said doctors before, although you have to understand there's not medicine like we have medicine now. And so they wouldn't necessarily be like doctors. You might want to put doctors in like quotation marks or something. But there might have been like healers. Maybe you came up with some other ideas as well. But those are just a few that I can remember over the years that we've come up with. Now that you have people specializing and you have all these new jobs, what you need to realize is once you start specializing, you're spending your time doing a particular kind of work. Oh, that means that you are not meeting all of your needs by yourself. That's what the hunter-gatherers did. They met all their own needs by hunting and gathering for their resources. But once you live in a community and they start to specialize, you are not meeting all of your needs. So what does that mean you have to do? You have to get your needs met in another way. This is now the invention of trade. Trade. So trade is needed to help supply the needs of communities, the people in them. And you can see a definition of trade. The exchange of goods and services between people. So now the people in a community learn to trade with each other. This is also going to be about a time when communities have to trade with other communities. Depending on where they put their community, they may not have all the resources that they need or all the resources that they would like to have. And so they may start to trade with other communities of people. Let's say you live in a community that does a lot of agriculture. It's a great place where you can farm tons and tons of stuff, way more than you need. But then there's a community that lives closer to like a forest or the woods. They may still have places to farm, but maybe they don't have as much space to farm as they would like, or they don't have as many kinds of crops as they would like, and they see that you have a lot of you have a lot of variety, and so they could offer to you a lot of wood that you could use to build, and in return you would trade them some of your crops that they would like or even need. So this is now the invention of trade in the New Stone Age. Something else about the New Stone Age and in civilizations in general once they start developing, one of those things is religion. We really start to see more community and organized religion in the New Stone Age. They might still have some common religion amongst the small groups of hunter-gatherers in the Old Stone Age. We think they had religion. Remember, they had those graves that had food and objects buried with them. So we think that they believed in the afterlife, which also suggests a religion for these Old Stone Age people. But now that we have more time on our hands in the New Stone Age because of agriculture, they now have more time to actually develop a religion amongst the people. Now, a lot of the religions of the New Stone Age people, not all of them, but a lot of the New Stone Age people worship things that we wouldn't worship today. They worship the four elements. What we mean by that is we're talking about fire, water, air, and earth. They would literally worship those things. That kind of makes sense. I mean, their life might revolve around needing water for agriculture or the fire for heat and for light and stuff like that. They also would worship animals. Is that so hard to believe? Think back to the old Stone Age caves. Those old Stone Age caves, what was all over the caves? Animals, animals, animals. And so it makes sense that they might worship those animals because they provided them with food. And they even worship their ancestors. They even worship their ancestors. Now that'd be kind of weird. Imagine going and praying to like your great-great-grandma or your long-lost ancestor from the 1500s. Seems kind of weird to us. But maybe this makes sense too. Because they realized if it wasn't for their ancestors being able to survive and being also help their children, also their ancestors, survive, these people wouldn't be here. So even if we don't think it's right that you should like worship and pray to your ancestors, maybe that's something that we should think about from time to time. If it weren't for these people hundreds of or thousands or tens of thousands of years ago who were able to find a way to survive and even thrive in the world, you and I would not be here. You and I would not be here without our ancestors finding ways to survive. Interesting. And a reason to be thankful. Another thing about their religion from this time period is the building of megaliths for religious gatherings. Now, that's not where we go and have religious gatherings now. I mean, you might go to a church or a temple or a cathedral. Usually there's buildings we go into now. But back in the New Stone Age, it was megaliths. Now, I'm showing you in those pictures to the right, I am showing you a very famous, what we believe to be a megalith. I'll give you a few seconds to think where you might have seen this. Where is it? What's its name? What you're looking at here is Stonehenge, which is in England. Stonehenge in England. We believe it might have been a megalith. Now this thing is crazy. You can see it looks like a couple circles, one kind of around the other one. These are perfect circles. Perfect circles. And take a look, you've got these huge stones. Huge stones. They're way taller than people. Way taller than people. And they have like stones stacked on top of stones. How did they do this? They did not have technology like we have technology today, not at all. How did they do this? We're not sure. Now, when humans can't decide how some of these ancient people could do some of these things that you can see that they did, we tend to sometimes think, oh, well, it must have been aliens who came down and built it. Seriously, that is what people think. If we can't come up with a way that this was done, we might think, okay, well, it was the aliens. Kind of crazy to think, but whatever. But that we believe that this Stonehenge was a megalith that people would have gone to worship at. Let's talk about the end of all the Stone Ages, the end of the New Stone Age. And when the New Stone Age ends, the Stone Ages in general are over. It kind of makes sense how it ends. It's when people begin using copper for tools. It's when people begin using copper for tools. Oh, well, if we start using copper for tools, we can't call it the Stone Age anymore. We're not using stone anymore. Granted, they still might use stones as a material, but copper becomes the most common material for tools. Now, I'm showing you in the picture here, this is what copper looks like. This is raw copper out in nature. The resource copper looks like a nugget here. How could they have formed this more easily than stone? This was easier to shape and form into tools than stone. Think about it. What could they use to make it easy to bend and to shape? Give you a few more seconds. Fire. Fire. See, you can't really heat up stones and then make it so that you can start bending them and shaping them into what you want. Copper, you can. You heat copper enough, you heat it enough, it gets softer. And then you can start bending it and shaping it into sharper tools and better looking tools. The name of this new age is not called the Copper Age. Nuh-uh. Nope. It's called the Bronze Age. Bronze Age. Here's why. The major ingredient in making bronze? Copper. you have an assessment tomorrow. Or we should say checkpoint, right? So this is your second checkpoint for Unit 2. You see a list here, and on your exit slip sheet, you'll have this. I would suggest that you need to make sure that you go through your notes and make sure you know all the things on this list. Make sure you know all the things that are on this list. And for your exit slip, I want you to think today. I want you to think about trade, and I want you to think about us today. For number one, when we trade with other countries, what do you think we give them? What do you think we give them? The other countries. Think of 2 to 3 things. Remember, you're going to trade away. You're going to give things that you have a lot of and other people want. So what do we have a lot of that other people would want and maybe not have a lot of themselves? Number 2, what do you think we get from other countries when we trade with them? So what do we want more of? What do other countries have a lot of that they can give us? And on the exit slip, I know you may see bullet points instead of numbers 1 and 2. Make sure that you number it, number 1 and number 2 on or inside your notebook. Or if you have the printouts, make sure to just change it to number 1 and number 2 on your printouts. And you want to make sure you have that. Also remember, if you didn't get all those notes down, it's okay. Go online. By the end of today, I'll put them on there. Go online, and then you can get all those notes caught up, or just borrow a fellow classmate's notebook. You can catch up that way. When you happen to finish your exit slip today, you should go and work on Unit 2, Lesson 4. Unit 2, Lesson 4. Also due tomorrow. So you got a lot of things to do. This exit slip needs to get done. Lesson 4 needs to get done. And you have a checkpoint coming tomorrow. And yeah, I know. See it on the board. You also have a note quiz tomorrow. Is it a lot? Yep, I understand. But you have time right now to get some things done. And for the notebook, you just have to make sure you have your notebook with the dates in it. So there's not much preparing for that. And then you just have to do a little bit to finish up Lesson 4. And just do a little bit of studying for your checkpoint tomorrow.